Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. This is going to be a Q&A. So I'm going to answer some of your questions that you posed to me last week uh, about my comic collection, about collecting comics. And I want to, before I get into these questions, I want to really put out there that if you want to have your question in the next video, which will happen on next Wednesday, please comment on this video with your question. If you do that, I will do a shout out for your channel. If you're trying to promote your channel, this is a free way to get it promoted on my channel. I will do a shout out to your channel and tell how great your channel is. I don't know. I'll just say, I'll say your channel name at least. And, maybe it's a little bit of free promotion for you. So ask your questions in the comments below. With all that said, let's look at the questions that people asked me last week. So first is from Callan Lowe. Thank you for answering my question. So he asked me a previous question. My question for next week, with your collection being as vast as it is, what popular characters or comics do you not collect? And I actually had to struggle with this a little bit. There are some modern comics that I do not collect for the most part. So for example, like modern X-Men, I didn't really get into some of the more modern issues that are just coming out right now. I'll pick up one or two, if I hear that it's a key, but for the most part, I'm not really buying much modern as much as I used to. I used to pick up a lot of modern stuff. So anything but there are a lot of modern ones that I collect. So it's it's like I'm a good example is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'll pick up one or two of the modern keys. Like I picked up this one, which is the first IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Okay. But I haven't really been picking up the regular series that much. And I picked up a couple other key issues, like the first Jennika, stuff like that. But for the most part, I'm not really collecting those ones. I just pick up a few key issues because I like the Ninja Turtles. But in terms of modern characters, I'm just trying to think, or certain characters that I didn't get into. Maybe some of the independents. I don't know. It's hard because I'm trying. I really do have such a broad taste that I pretty much love everything. I try to collect so many things. So I'm not really sure because you ask me now, and then I'll be like, oh, but I really would like to get that. So I don't know. I have too broad of a taste, and sometimes I collect everything. Sometimes to my detriment. So I don't know. It's much easier for me to say that I like certain characters better than other ones instead of what you're not collecting, because I seem to collect everything. A bit of a hoarder when it comes to comics. The next question is from QE, and as a fan, I'll ask a question as well to the video. Let's imagine that you know that you'll die in a month. For some reason, what would you do? Would you tell your kids to keep the comics? Would you sell them, or would you spend them, or would you give some away to friends, or would you expand your collection to hold a Detective Comics 27 in your hands before dying? So probably what I would do is in my dying days, I guess, I would love to just keep my collection, and I would tell my children what comics are ones that they should really, appreciate or not appreciate, and I give them sort of a sense of how much they're all worth, so that they can make that decision for themselves whether they just sell the collection or not. Because it's not going to really help me to have the collection when I'm dead. I know that's not really the coolest answer, but when I'm dead, it's really up to the kids what they want to do with the collection. I hope that they will enjoy the collection and add to it and expand upon it. But if they choose just to sell it for money that they spend on some random weird thing, I would be happy with that too. I just really want to create a legacy with my comics, that they have something that they can enjoy, either physically enjoy by looking at the comics like I do, or enjoy the financial rewards of selling that collection. So I'm hoping that they'll keep it and it'll become something that gets passed down generation after generation, and it'll be something that will be a family collection, but who knows? So that would be what I would do. Uh, Rocket Fighter 8, great series. Keep up your daily videos. They're always the first ones I check out. Thanks for answering my 2 questions. For next week, what are your 3 favorite Good Girl comic book covers? This one really bothered me in a way because I was like, I like this one. I like this Good Girl art. I like this Good Girl art. There was just so many. I actually had a stack. And then I was like, okay, I got to pick 3. And then I kept on like, oh, but I like that one more. I like, oh, it was really hard, actually, this one, in a way, because I really love a lot of covers. So, but I did pick 3, and I'm going to show you 3 that I picked. And I'm not going to lie to you and say that these are my ultimate favorite, because if you ask me again, I'd probably pick a different 3 because I love so many of these covers. But these ones are kind of good examples of good or girl art that I love. So, and they are ones I actually do love too. If I was going to make a top 10 list, these probably would be on that, or maybe a top 20, because I really like to have so many on that list. But here are the 3 that I was thinking about. And it would be my Archie 50. Let me see if I can zoom in there. And that's Bob Montana art. I just love this cover. It's just a great innuendo cover, and it's like, I like covers where it's good girl art, but it's also got that little bit of innocence, a little bit of innuendo, that kind of charm to it. And I like Golden Age good girl art. So this is definitely one of those top 3, I guess. And this is Archie number 50. Very, very cool book for me. Another one is, I'm a big fan of Al Felstein. I'm really trying to get everything he ever produced in terms of good girl art. So I picked one of my favorite Al Felsteins, and this is Junior number 14. And it's just a really great cover. It's got a bit of that headlight cover going on. It's got a bit of that 40s hairstyle, like Betty Page look. And it's one of those ones where it's a little bit of sexiness because, you know, you can see a little bit of her slip. It's kind of a little bit sexy. So Al Felstein really knew how to draw women. And I think this is a really great example of that. Just a really great cover. I actually look at this every day because I have it in my office where I can just sort of look at it on my shelf. So it's one of my favorite covers. Another one, and I actually just picked this one as an example of a whole series of good girl art that I really like. And I picked this one because it's a high grade, so it shows well. This is Jungle Comics 101, and it's one of my favorite of the Jungle Comics covers, and that's why I actually bought it in high grade, because I really like this cover. But there's so many that are similar in a way that would be maybe exchanged for this one. Like I'm thinking like All Top Comics, or any of the kind of Rula art. This is not a Rula cover, but but there's a lot of good girl art that came with Jungle Comics, where they're kind of in bondage, maybe some precarious situation going on. You got so I always liked this kind of good girl art where it's the guy rescuing the girl. She's in a really bad situation, maybe some baddie over here, like, you know, potentially either torturing the girl or causing her imminent death. So I like this whole situation going on. It's just a really beautiful cover, in my opinion, too. So I'd be interested in hearing what other people, I'd love to hear your top 3 good girl art covers, and because I always like hearing those ones, because if it's not something that I've known about before, I will actually look for it and say, hey, maybe you're right. That is a great cover, and I'll pick it up. So I always like knowing what other people's favorite covers are as well. So those would be 3, a little bit more of an example with 2 of them, but definitely the Archie would be on my top 3 list. So it's just really one of my favorites. Next is Phil Kemp. Camacho. I'm brutalized people's names. I'm sorry. Uh, best Q&A to date. He was referring to last video. I recommend you check that out. I'll actually link it at the end of this video. I thought the House of Secrets was your favorite Bronze Age. Since okay, that's okay, since collectors are hard to pick just one from an era, like the video. So basically, this is a bit of a comment about what I said in my previous video. In my previous video, I was talking about my favorite different ages, like, Golden Age, Bronze Age, and so forth. And I was really thinking about superheroes when I was answering that question. Now, House of Secrets, which you see right there, is one of my favorite covers of that era, okay, the Bronze Age. And actually, it probably is my favorite cover of that age because I really do love that cover. But in terms of characters, in terms of the coolness of the book itself, it was a big deal for me to get Hulk 181. It was just a really big deal to get that Wolverine, first appearance, what is now considered his first full appearance. And it was just a really big deal once I had that Grail in my collection. I was just so excited about that. Much more so than this one. I actually was very excited about having House of Secrets in my collection, but it was just a different level. Maybe because it's a much more pricey book, and it is kind of a mega key from the Bronze Age. So that is my caveat to what I said last week, and I recommend you watch that video, and you can see I was kind of alluding to similar ideas. Okay, next is from Dope Comics. What's your best deal you ever found on the hunt? Okay, so basically this is his first, he has two questions, but that's the first one. So when I was on the hunt, and it was just a kind of interesting one. Somebody basically had a short box, and I wish I had it handy, but it was a short box filled with some golden, some silver, and a whole bunch of Bronze Age horror books. Okay, it was like a little box. And I was like, how much do you want for your, how much do you want? Because they were selling boxes. They're literally selling whole boxes of comics. And there's this little short box. All the other comics were like, this is back in the 90s. So all the other boxes were like, just like, X-Men #1s, or, like just where, you see like the same comic over and over again. And it was just like all junk kind of basic comics at the time. Okay. So this little short box, though, they wanted $10 for it. $10. Now each of those books in that short box are worth anywhere from $10 to $30. So if you think about it, I did quite well on that little short box. It had maybe 60 comics in it. And it also had some Gold Key Scooby-Doo. Like it had didn't have #1 Gold Key Scooby-Doo, but it had #2, 3, 4, 5. It just like had a nice little run of Scooby-Doo in it. So it was a really great collection, like early Bronze Age horror, some Golden Age stuff. The Golden Age wasn't horror; it was like Disney stuff. So it was kind of cool, anyways. And there was some Silver Age stuff mixed in as well. So it was just a really great box with lots of kind of cool things in it. And yeah, I thought that was probably my best deal ever because it was $10. You can't go wrong when it's that cheap. And then you find all these great books in it. So that was his first question. His second question is, what character would you like to see get a major movie that has never had a movie? Okay, so I think I mentioned this before, and I'm going to actually show you her. I'm sort of in love with this character right now. I don't know why. I really like this character, and it's Exciting Comics number 53, and this is the first appearance on cover of Miss Mask. So I really like Miss Mask. I think she's just so cool, and I don't know why. She's not like, her story isn't that great, but it just is interesting to me, and I just like the character. I like the fact that she's, kind of got that interesting look to her, that 40s style. I really think it would make a good movie. as well. So I just really like this character. So and I'd like to see some, sexy bombshell kind of play her. That'd be really cool. Um, so yeah, so I'd like to see a movie about Miss Mask. I just think it would be really interesting to see how they would do it. I hope they would do it in that 40s style instead of the modern style. I don't like the current way that they portray women in movies. I think, if anything, they don't seem like women nowadays in movies. I find nowadays women are too boy-like, and I don't like that. I kind of like women to be feminine and sexy, and yet at the same time smart, and can do cool things as well. So Miss Mask is a cool character. She has that strong woman, but she's also a character who is feminine, and she knows what she can do with that femininity. So I really like Miss Mask. So that'd be my choice. I think I said something similar in a previous video, so a bit redundant on that. I'm a bit, a little bit puppy love going on for that character right now. So maybe I'll find some new character in the months ahead. But right now, I really like that character. See, I can't even talk because I'm so excited about her. Next question is Mr. G Dora. Any reason why you went for PGX when you had your first Wonder Woman graded? So my All Stars, right there, All Stars number 8 was graded by PGX, and there was a few reasons why I chose PGX. One, it had previously been graded by CGC. When I first purchased it, I didn't actually know that. It was later, while I was still making payments for it, that I found out that it was graded by CGC previously. And CGC had kind of erroneously graded it. They graded it as a green label, where they said that the centerfold had been married. But when I looked at it, we looked thoroughly through the comic. It was obvious that that was not the case. So I thought, if I send it back to CGC, which would probably be the ideal choice because you get a little bit more value from CGC slabs, I thought what they're going to do is just, again, grade it as a married copy and get that green label. And I didn't want to get a green label. So that was one reason I didn't use CGC. The second thing was I didn't like the idea of CGC holding the book for 4 months or whatever length of time. Like I was hearing horror stories about CGC just taking forever. So I didn't really want to have a book that I really loved being held for that long. So I went with PGX on that reason as well, because PGX is fairly good turnaround time. They got that back to me within a month. So very quick turnaround time. And the other thing was they were much more affordable. To get that graded at CGC, they were going to charge like 5% of the value and all these crazy fees. And also, CGC doesn't have an on-site presser, or didn't when I submitted. I don't know if they still do. I think they actually have an outside company that they use to press the comics. I wanted it cleaned and pressed. PGX offers that service in-house. So I kind of wanted the whole gambit within one company rather than multiple companies involved. So that was another reason. So price, extra services, and turnaround time. Those were the reasons. And the fact that I thought maybe PGX would look at it a little differently and maybe give me a bit of a break on the green label versus blue label. And I was right. They recognized it for what it was, and they were actually really good about the way that they graded it. So I was happy with PGX on that one. And for the most part, PGX is a good grader. Just so you know, like there's a lot of bad talk about PGX, especially with the restoration. And they're actually pretty good at spotting restoration. I wouldn't say they're as good as CGC for the most part, but they are good about the grading. And I sent books that I thought were much higher grade. They were really strict. It's a really hard thing to get a 9.8 with PGX, just so you know. If you want to get a 9.8, it's better to send it to CGC because they're more likely to give you a 9.8. PGX, very strict grader, and actually, I think a very fair grader. So those are my opinions about PGX. So and the price is just so much better. and turnaround time. So those are the big things. Okay, so next one is from Joseph, and I'm going to hopefully pronounce his name correctly. Soko Soko Sokolowski. Okay. I think I pronounced it better the previous time. He actually asked me a question last week, and I did a better job of pronouncing it back then. But hopefully I did okay job, Joseph. Um, I have a question for you, my friend. What, if any, long-running monthly comic book series do you own that you begun reading and collecting from issue 1 and have every issue in that run? Okay, wait. For me, okay, so he's basically saying if I have a full run of something, what is that full run? For me, it's a few. He says. Currently, I bought, read, and have every Spawn in the run. For DC title, it would be Hellblazer. I have the complete 300 issue run from the first day of the title it came out into the late 80s. For Marvel, since the reboot and restart of so many titles, it's hard to remember which title actually became a long running. Okay. My guess would be the first Thunderbolt series, which has about 157 issues. So, I actually collected Spawn as well. And I like Spawn, the early Spawn I actually read, but I sort of, maybe because of life, things going on, I stopped really collecting, where I'd buy, comics on bulk every day, every week, like get all the new comics that came out. I stopped doing that sort of late 90s. So what happened was I went off to Korea. I mentioned that in previous video. You can learn about my trip to Korea, and it was just impossible to collect, the modern comics. It was just impossible to go to the local comic book shop because there was no Western local comic book shop to go to. So there was about 3 years where I stopped collecting. So my Spawn run really runs up to the mid 30s, almost 40, issue 40. And then I sort of stopped. So I read up till then, and then I stopped for a while. And then I picked up a few keys later for Spawn. So I also like Spawn a lot. The other one that I bought and followed really well was Bone. I really liked Bone as a comic. So I have, right from the beginning, I had Bone #1 all the way, first prints of everything. Even some signed copies and doodled ones where Jeff Smith actually doodled on it, and he made some of the little art piece for me. So I have those. So that was a pretty good investment. Those are like, $3 comic. Now it's like like a I think $2,000 or $3,000 comic. So those would be the ones I actually read and really enjoyed. There's a few others that I had the full runs of. Anything from Warren, I've read the full series, like Vampirella. So I have from Vampirella from #1 to 113, which is actually Harris, but I had the complete run of Vampirella, and I had the complete run of Vengeance of Vampirella, which was produced by Harris, and I read all those. So I was a big Vampirella fan. I also have the complete runs of Creepy and Eerie, and I read all of those. So those would be full runs that I read, and those are like each are like in the hundreds. I think Eerie is 136, 39 is the full series. And Creepy is 146 in the whole series, 146 issues. So those would be the big runs that I read. They're not like a ongoing series per se, but they are, a series that I read. So that would be my thing there. Okay, and last question is from John Gabriel. If you ask the average non-comic reading person in the street in the 1940s, who did they think was the most iconic comic book character? They probably would have said Superman. So, what do you think that at the average non-comic reading person in the street would say is today's most iconic comic character? So, this is going to be interesting. I would actually disagree with the Superman one. Um, I would have actually said Captain Marvel. So, because at the time in the 40s, Captain Marvel was outselling Superman, even though both were, pretty famous. At the time, Captain Marvel was kind of the big superhero. It was the comic that most people read, and even though maybe people within the um, general time period would that don't read comics might not be as familiar with the ones that we would know. I still think that because of that, just reader popularity, where it really did almost have as many as double the number of comics being produced for Captain Marvel. I believe that that maybe would influence the non-reader of comics to maybe think Captain Marvel was the most iconic superhero at the time. Um, Probably some other ones would be the Superman, Batman, Green Lantern would be a big one as well. Those are kind of the most iconic characters from the 40s. Now, if you ask people nowadays, so actually, I had something really interesting. I don't know. I think kids are so lame nowadays. Actually, sorry, kids, but you're lame. What happened is I've had in the last since they kind of lifted the lockdown restrictions. We've been having friends over again, and they brought their kids over. Now, where I live in Canada, it's very multicultural, so maybe that is a bit of the influence here. So most of my friends are non-white, and their kids are first generation North Americans. And so I had some Iranian friends come over, and their kids didn't know anything. They didn't know who X-Men were. They never even heard of X-Men. They didn't know Batman or any of those characters. I was like, oh, really? You don't know Batman? Like it's kind of a major character. They didn't know a lot of those characters. And I had some another group of friends come over today, actually. And I asked them, hey, Wonder Woman and all these characters that I thought were big. And these are second generation Korean friends, like that came over. And they didn't know a lot of the characters. They didn't really know X-Men. They didn't really know a lot of the characters that I would have thought kids should know. And, obviously they wouldn't know Fantastic Four. They wouldn't know any of those characters. But they did know Spider-Man. And they all seem to know Spider-Man. So I actually would say Spider-Man would be that character that people would know from today, even though it's a Silver Age character. I think that would be the most iconic character that kind of goes beyond the comic reader, that people know Spider-Man. So that would be the one I would say that the non-comic reader would know. And it's kind of weird that is the one that they would know. To me, there's bigger ones that I would have thought maybe they should know, like Batman or Superman. But it was Spider-Man. So I'm basing this on a few friends' kids that I was very sad. Like I'm showing them all these grails. I'm like all excited, like, oh, and I thought maybe the kids would be like, oh, I really like that, but they were like, oh, they didn't even care. Like I showed them My Amazing Fantasy number 15, and I'm like, this is a really great comic. And they said, oh yeah, Spider-Man, but they weren't like excited that it was like his first appearance, and they didn't really get it. They didn't. So a little sad to see that new generation of kids not really appreciating the things that I think are awesome, but at least my kids appreciate it somewhat. So that's been my Q&A video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And as I said, the comments that are on this video are going to be, I hope, just put questions there and I will answer them next week. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I love your questions. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.